raving about Rebecca, powerful biceps, delicate beauty. Greetings, Southern California and the United States and whoever else might or might not be downloading our show, or the few who listen to it live. This is Vandal Drummond. There's nothing like Southern California in the summertime. Don't get more bitchin' than that. Be you on the beach in the San Fernando Valley, in Corona, San Diego. Whether you're in the air-conditioned gym or baking on the beach, this is the most bitchin' place on earth. I'm telling you, it don't get more beautifully shallow than this. And I say that without a hint of sarcasm. I mean it. This is bitchin'. And I am joined by my faithful comrade, Alfredo Esparza, now on Facebook, so everybody friend him. How are you doing tonight, Fredo?
I'm doing good this week. As opposed to last week. No, just kidding.
Well, last week you were doing great because 1 week ago, I guess if it was exactly a week ago, you might have been a little blue because the Lakers were having a tough time in game number 7. But right damn, did they have a movie, a final real ending or what?
Yeah. It was one of the, I was going to tell you, I think over the weekend that we might not do the show. And I thought, you know what, I probably don't want to jinx this, so I'll just wait till Wednesday. And then, you ended up emailing me right before that day. So it's a good thing. It's a good week to be a Laker fan.
That's right. And even Vandal Drummond, who does not watch basketball very much, I watched the last half hour of that game, and that was a nail-biter, even with no connection to basketball. It was so cool. It was not just a Kobe effort. That was one team effort. Everybody got to shine.
Hey, the weird thing was how bad everybody was playing early in the game besides Ron Artest. Like Kobe Bryant was missing shots, Pau Gasol was missing shots, everybody was missing shots.
Yeah, in fact, I turned it on briefly early in the game, and I saw them getting trounced, so soundly. I was thinking, I can't bear to watch. And I couldn't help but think, whoa, man, Fredo must be having a rotten night. But as it progressed, man, that was intense. That was wonderful.
The one thing I've learned from being a Laker fan during this last 10 years.
What's that?
As opposed to the previous years when it was like the Pat Riley years where that team usually just trounced teams.
Yes.
The Phil Jackson era, you always know it all comes down to the fourth quarter. They could be down by 15, 20 points and they'll find a way to come back.
Man, Pat Patterson couldn't book a better finish for a match, I got to tell you. Man, what a day I've been having. Before we get into wrestling, I just have to talk about the gym workout I had today. I always go in there with my iPod. I'm like almost everybody else in the world. I love the iPod. For years and years, I hated going running. I hated going to the gym. I won't say I hated them, but the thing that I hated was it was so inconvenient to have any music attached to your ears while you're working out or trying to run. And I don't know, today was just one of those unique workouts where I was just powering through everything and just, I had like Jack LaLanne level energy, just one of those miraculous workouts. And I'm learning that it's a good thing to stretch when you're done with a workout. So, stretching my hamstrings, stretching my shoulders, stretching my back, and then the real treat is I get into the lotus position to stretch my knees and my hips. And as I sat there in the lotus, the song Mari in Love was on my shuffle on the iPod. Oh. Mari in Love by the Pugs. And I have got to tell everybody out there who is listening, I don't care if you're into classic rock, jazz, rap, hip-hop, country, whatever you're into, you have to get this album called Bite the Red Knee. And it is a complete steal. You can get it on Amazon.com through the individual vendors for as low as 33 cents plus the $2.98 shipping. And this song actually brings you one step to this ecstatic nirvana that is hard to achieve. Now, I'm trying to think how I should describe Mari in Love. I mean, I could sit around trying to, trying to go over just like, the things I know nothing about. I know nothing about music. I just can tell you whether it's bitchin' or not. If you're a wrestling fan, the first thing I have to tell you is it starts off with the 2001 Space Odyssey theme that Ric Flair comes out to. A very primitive Neanderthal version of it, just blaring guitars. And then after that, it just bursts out into full tilt boogie, pure energy. And the best way to describe Mari in Love from somebody who doesn't even know what a guitar chord is but listens to a ton of music is picture the most dynamic, amazing orgasm you ever had. We have all had orgasms, whether they're with our lover, a one-night stand, whether they're self-motivated, whether we just dreamed them up. We've all had intense, amazing orgasms. Picture the most memorable one you had. Now, picture the most intense 5 seconds of that orgasm. Now take that 5 seconds of that amazing orgasm, plug it into your computer, and convert it to an MP3 file that's, I think it's about maybe 3.5 minutes long. And that is the song Mari in Love. And I always have to give another thanks to Michael Dean of Athens, Georgia, better known to some as Han Chan or Han Soo, one of the most bitchin' Taekwondo experts on this planet, I must say. Somebody who gets it. Somebody who just understands. So I'm telling everybody, go on Amazon.com, go to the music section, type in the phrase, bite the red knee, and buy that CD. It'll be the most important purchase you have made in a long, long time. You cannot buy a pay-per-view this great. You cannot go, to the theaters to see a blockbuster that's this intense. This is just bitchin'. And
for
let's see, the cheapest copy you can get as little as just like 33 cents. It don't get more bitchin' than that, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what's happened to the pugs, but I wish they would come out of hiding. From Honey K and Hapikama Yama, these guys are awesome. Okay, now we can move on to wrestling.
Don't you think for 33 cents you could just upload it onto the internet?
You probably could. And, well, since these are individual vendors selling it and that the pugs probably won't make any money off these copies, just download it.
No, I'm saying
the song, Mari in Love.
I think they should just do that, given 33 cents plus shipping. I mean, they're not making any money off of that.
No, they're not, and that's why it's such a steal. It costs more to go into church if you buy into that collection plate ripoff. And this is a much more religious experience than any denomination out there.
Dominatrix?
Yeah, that was a slip of the tongue, but what a wonderful slip of the tongue that was.
Does this have to do with the whole orgasm thing, dominatrix?
What's that?
Are you talking about dominatrix now? I mean,
yeah, dominatrix and domination. I guess talking about this most intense orgasm ever, I guess it's just on my mind now. I mean...
Should I bring up the Avatar 3D porn?
Yes.
You know they're doing that, right?
I heard talk about that. What's the story on that?
I don't know, just that if they're making an Avatar 3D porn, it's going to be like the most expensive porn ever made.
That that one will actually raise my curiosity enough that I might just have to see it.
Yeah, but you got to buy a 3D TV or something. I don't think you're going to go to a movie.
Nah, yeah, come to think of it, it's a cute idea, but I don't think it's going to go very far if you need a 3D TV. How many people are going to buy these 3D TVs?
I would hate to see what's going to be the thing coming out.
If it's starring Peter North, then you might want to get a raincoat on because you might get smothered.
You know what? Have you ever been to that? You've been to Disneyland recently, have you?
I have not been to Disneyland in a long time, which is funny because we used to have annual passes. And no, I did not make the slip and say anal passes, despite the theme tonight.
Yeah, they do this. They have this 3D version for Muppets. It's like you sit down and it's like the movie theater. It's like the theater for the Muppet Show. And
oh my Lord, really?
And it's 3D, and they throw water at you. So I'm like, oh shit.
You actually get doused?
Yeah, you get doused.
Man. So, if Jose Fernandez is listening, we'll have to get the 3D Robert Tilton where he's dousing you with it, baby. He's dousing you with it.
That's what I'm thinking. You have a friend over, you just throw some shit at him at the exact same time.
Well, maybe there is potential for 3D. Maybe I spoke too soon. Maybe I'm being a little too quick to judge. This world is just getting more and more fascinating. I hope someday reality becomes where, once we're all dead and gone, we can just reboot ourselves up into a new plug-in disc for the computer. Not plug-in disc, you know what I mean, the little plug-in drives.
The USB port.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, illiterate here, but, and we could just have our own realities like on Farmville where you can, no matter who you are, no matter how rich or poor you are, you can choose your own reality, whether it's on Farmville or on the beach, in the mountains. You could just reality is so overrated, and I hope someday that computers take over the world and make reality even more surreal than it already is.
We have a caller already.
Who's on?
Hey, guys.
Yeah, it's here.
Is this the Bixie Demon?
Yes.
Bixie Demon, how you doing tonight?
Good, and now I'm hoping that when the kayfabe cops make their debut, that they will be facing off against the denominatrixes.
Oh, my God. Every time you come on this show, you get elevated to a higher level of existence, Bix. I love the stuff you come up with. This is another area where I hope surreality takes over. I hope someday Incredibly Strange Wrestling gets into our power with a huge budget, and we'll have cool people like Kevin Kleinrock on helping out, and the Bixie Demon would have to be on the booking committee. And he would have power, I tell you. You would be potent.
Poor Bix trying to understand what Johnny Legend wants to do. He's like, what?
Yes. If you can decipher a Johnny Legend booking angle, then you have achieved greatness.
Well, we can use Jew magic to read each other's minds.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, man, there are all the possibilities, all the potential that's out there.
Incredibly Strange Wrestling's booking isn't as bad as, wrestling nowadays anyway, so.
I have to say, I think even the most complicated Johnny Legend booking strategies still make more sense than half the swill you see out there. I mean, even WWE Raw, you have this beautiful angle with the NXT invasion, and I think everybody's a little confused at where it's going.
Yeah, especially now that Brian Danielson is gone. You look at those other guys, it's like, okay, I really don't want to see those other guys wrestle, so where's this going?
I know, it's like you had the meat of the angle there in Brian Danielson, Brian Daniel-esque. And
you know what? The one thing, though, I do like is that they have that guy, the new GMs sending everything via email. That would be like the idea.
I actually like that. I know I know part of it. I know in one sense I'm not supposed to like it because they just haven't decided where they're going with it. Yeah. But I do like the mystery guy at the helm of the computer. I kind of dig that.
Well, the only reason I say that because you know how every time you're thinking, man, I would like to be in wrestling, but you have to move to Stamford, Connecticut, or Tennessee, or wherever the hell TNA is, or Mexico, or whatever. Well, now you can do it via email. You don't have to worry about going to these weird places.
Wouldn't it be funny if it winds up that the general manager is actually somebody in Nigeria who 99% of the time is sending out scam letters and 1% of the time he's sending booking instructions to WWE?
Oh, by the way, have you heard what the Nigerian president's name is?
No.
Oh, I forgot what it was because I read something about how it's he's at the G20 or something. He has a name like you'd expect from one of the Nigerian scammers. It's like Good Luck Jonathan. I think it's Good Luck Jonathan.
I love that. Good Luck Jonathan. Doesn't that sound like the name of a comedy series on the BBC network? Good Luck Jonathan, appearing tonight. Oh Lord.
Well, let me get the other caller in.
Who's the other caller?
I don't know. Just fills up with phone numbers.
Oh, I'm calling in because A couple weeks ago, there was a great injustice done. One brave man was beaten down by a group of thugs. And I'm not talking about the NXT situation. I'm talking about when I missed the show and was maligned and dragged through the mud for an hour and a half.
Then this must be none other than Dan Farren.
I thought it was Mike Heenan.
Who was frightened to speak to Kevin Kleinrock, is what I understand.
I like Kevin. Kevin was fine that night, but no, I was calling from the John Lovitz Comedy Club and could not get through. I don't know why. I might have had one number off on the number or whatever. But
yeah, it might have been just one of those weird...
I listened to the podcast later, and I'm yelling at it and saying, "No, I was trying to get through." And then I listened to you on with Kid Zombie, right? And they're going, "Oh, this must be Dan Farren." I said, "What? Am I calling on every show now?" Supposedly, I'm sitting at home.
We should have to see a running gag.
If I had been on the line, that would have been interesting because that would have been strange. But because this was already taped. But no, I'm back calling in this evening, so you can quit maligning me.
Okay, we will behave. We will wait until July 31st at the Millennium Pro Wrestling Show in Chatsworth, California, to take further pot shots at Dan Farren.
That's right. Or, after that, August 15th at Yankee Doodles in Simi Valley, we have our first spot show.
That's right.
So we're moving out there. We're getting out there, and it should be on the 31st of July. It should be a lot of fun. Adam Pearce is coming in to defend the NWA title against Ryan Taylor, and we're going to have the first round of the tag team tournament. It's going to be divvied up over several shows, and one of the matches that I'm looking forward to is it's Bo Cooper and Craze against Anchors Away, and I think that's going to be a really good match.
Anchors Away, who is actually a really awesome tag team. I've only gotten to see them courtesy of YouTube a few times.
And I hear that also Lucky Pierre is actually in the tag tournament, but we don't know who his mystery partner is yet.
Oh, well, I'll have to put the bug in Lucky Pierre's ear.
You'll have to do that.
Or I'll have to put the bug up his to get answers from him.
Wait, we got another caller. I could take the day off today.
This is my lord.
All right.
Don't worry, Fredo. We're going to come back and ask you your opinion several times.
Of course.
Damn it, Dr. Lucha, turn down your computer.
I know. Dr. Lucha's listening right now.
I think I'm hearing a ghost. Is this actually Coast to Coast with Art Bell? I think I'm hearing all these ghostly sounds. What do they call that when they turn on the tape recorder in a graveyard to pick up the paranormal activity?
I have no idea.
Oh, somebody's got to know. They're the greatest Coast to Coast episodes where they go into some haunted house or something. They just turn on a tape recorder and you hear these odd voices every now and then that sounds like the backward masking on the Led Zeppelin albums. Well, we hope if that's Dr. Lucha, if that's Dr. Luch, we hope you try again, because we would love to talk to you. There is so much going on in Lucha Libre these days. And
he's still on the line.
Hello? Yeah, there you are.
No, this is Dr. Lucha. Larry Park.
We're just not giving him the time to talk, that's all.
Yeah, wait, who is it?
It's Larry Park.
It's Larry Park.
Oh, my God, Larry Park. Larry Park, Alfredo and I were just talking about you before the show started, and we have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Are you any relation to L.A. Park?
I wish I was. I saw that video of him punching that idiot fan. I wish I was.
Was that sweet or what?
That was.
Oh, my Lord.
You.
Do you have the dance moves?
No, I don't. I wasn't blessed with those kinds of feet. Sorry.
Oh, my God, this is a wonderful surprise. Larry Park is one of the many people involved with the Millennium Pro Wrestling promotion. That is, I guess, the epicenter of Millennium Pro is Chatsworth at the moment.
That's correct.
And actually, Larry is the voice of the on the DVDs, of the MPW DVDs. He does the play-by-play, along with Under Pressure.
I try.
Well, Larry, it is good to hear from you. Is there any subject you would like to bring up on this episode of Slammin' Stan?
Well, we were Dan brought up the MPW card. We are going to be running in Yankee Doodles over in Simi Valley, and we got a stacked card for July 31st. I can't wait myself to see it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a really enjoyable card. As Dan Farren said, Lucky Pierre is going to have a mystery partner.
Yes, that's correct.
I wonder if Lucky Pierre knows who it is. Actually, he does. I just asked him. He said yes, he knows, but he's not going to tell me because Lucky Pierre never speaks except to utter one word. What's the only word he uttered in his match against Fanboy?
I quit?
That's 2 words.
That's 2 words.
5 letters.
Dick will appreciate this. The only thing that Lucky Pierre uttered in that match was, wow!
Wait, is Lucky Pierre's mystery partner going to be physico-nuclear under a mask as Jeff Larson?
No, if he's going to be under a mask, he'd wrestle as Dan Farren.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, by the way, B.S. Cohen's not too happy with Lucky Pierre, which is why he formed a tag team of his own.
Oh, my Lord. First he uses me like a piece of meat and sicks me against Fanboy, and now he just casts me out worse than any lover ever can. Not me, personally.
Wait, someone else is using Lucky Pierre like a piece of meat? Isn't it usually the opposite?
Yeah, usually Lucky Pierre enjoys that kind of thing, but...
Yeah.
But, well, since I channeled the mask of Lucky Pierre with great frequency, all I can say is that he's looking forward to getting into Barry Cohen's face on July 31st.
And
I have to say it's really pretty amazing how Lucky Pierre has really. You would think everything would say to you that he wouldn't catch on over the years in Southern California, but he has become this cult figure, and it's amazing when you think about that.
And what's amazing is the whole gimmick was thought up like as a whim. Just the story about how Lucky Pierre became Lucky Pierre was the one Simi Valley show that you and Larry Doyle booked me on. It was supposed to be Vandal Drummond versus Physico Nuclear, and I think Physico Nuclear. I think it was like right around final time for his students, and he wasn't able to make the show. But they said we want 2 Lucha Libre guys. What was that promoter's name?
Oh God, that's so many promotions ago.
Yeah, I'm even forgetting what the promotion was called. But they were actually doing a TV taping, and the promoter stated, "I need 2
jeweler guy." Yeah.
Yeah, 2 Lucha Libre guys is the way he put it.
Yeah.
And so since I wasn't able to get Fizzy, I got our old friend Frankie Destruction D, and we show up. It's going to be Vandal Drummond versus Frankie D. And as we're getting ready for the match, the promoter's like looking at us with a slightly confused look and says, "Where are your masks?" And we're saying, "Well, we don't wear masks." And he says, No, you have to wear masks. That's what a Lucha Libre guy does." And Frankie and I just look at each other like, is this dude a retard or something? And we're saying, no, we wrestle Lucha style, and he was insistent that Lucha style meant that you wore a mask. So we had Frankie, since I had been working Incredibly Strange Wrestling for a while, I always had several changes of costumes and masks in my gym bag. So we got the mask that was used for the character Yom Ripper in Incredibly Strange. And we put that on Frankie and called him the Tel Aviv Terror.
Nice.
And we took, at that time it was the white mask that I used for the character Telly Evangelist. And it was a white mask with this big grin on it and a cross on the forehead, if I remember right. And we're thinking, what do we call ourselves? And I think Danny Wolf was involved. And back then, we loved to go to Mondo Video and get all the, just trippy videos that they had to offer there. And then there was a trailer on one of those videos for a Herschel Gordon Lewis movie, one of his really early movies called The Adventures of Lucky Pierre, which was basically just a skin flick about this French guy named Lucky Pierre who naked women pop out of nowhere in front of him, and he shakes his head in amazement, and then when he reaches out to touch them, they disappear. Just something very, very silly. And at the time, Vandal Drummond was actually doing a gay gimmick, believe it or not, Baby Bitch Drummond. And so we said, well, why don't you do the same gimmick? I can't remember if it was you or Larry who suggested that. One of you guys suggested, why don't you just do the same gimmick under a mask? And
yeah, I think I did, because it was either that or do Larry's character of La Femme Nikita Koloff.
That's right. Yes. So that's how Lucky Pierre was born, and my match on that show was just kind of so-so, but I could not believe how I got over that night. the legend began. Yeah, that's right.
Even, it's interesting because how big of a gap was there between Lucky Pierre's last appearance and his reemergence?
The last appearance of Lucky Pierre was at the last Incredibly Strange show, at least Johnny Legend's version of Incredibly Strange. So that would have been 2007.
Oh, so it's been several years, but see, the character is fondly remembered by a lot of people.
Well, I got to say that genuinely really tickles me and moves me, and well, it's nice to be doing Lucky Pierre again. Wait, that could be taken several ways.
Now, did the movie title inspire the name of the sexual position, or vice versa, or did he just not know about it?
This is the funny thing. I knew nothing about the sexual position. For those folks who had never heard the term Lucky Pierre, Lucky Pierre was a member of a bisexual threesome who is giving it to the woman in the threesome from behind, while the other man in the threesome is giving it to him from behind. So Lucky Pierre is the man in the middle who is simultaneously giving it and taking it. But
that is a hell of a promo picture.
Should I cut that promo? Should I start having Lucky Pierre speak and cut that promo on the NPW?
And by the way, if anybody wants to see what Lucky Pierre looks like who may not have any pictures or whatever, if you go to the mpwwrestling.com spot, you'll find a little biography and a lot of really good pictures of Lucky Pierre.
Yeah, just remind people it's the wrestler, not the Lucky Pierre that.
Yeah, exactly.
If you search elsewhere on the internet, you might find a different Lucky Pierre. No, we honestly came up with the name Lucky Pierre just because of the Herschel Gordon Lewis movie. And we just kind of shrugged and Lucky Pierre. We thought it just sounded funny. And we had no idea what a symbiotic connection we had to the term.
And let's not forget, you had a great match with King Favi back, 2001?
Oh, my gosh, you remember? Yes. In fact, that was, I think, the one appearance I made at the Jewish Community Center, which was a fun place to have the shows.
Oh, yeah.
And, Larry Park, since we have you on, I've been curious how you, got involved in pro wrestling, period, just the interest, and how you got involved with Logan and XPW. XPW? MPW. I'm sorry. Wrong PW, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Right. Well, I've been a fan for a very long time. After college, I began working in local cable outlets doing some broadcasting, but I really loved wrestling. First, I got together with some guys who also worked in local cable outlets, and we formed something called the Independent Wrestling Report here in Southern California. I think they did one UIWA show, and we did one for Bill Anderson when he ran IWC back in Riverside.
Oh, yes.
And that's how doing another show for Bill, that's where I first met Logan. He and Red were, I think it was Red. Yeah, as a matter of fact, it was Red and I want to call him the Skate Devil versus Logan X and a guy named Rage, who wasn't a very good worker. Nice guy, not a good worker.
I was going to say, I don't think I've heard of that cat.
Yeah.
There's a reason, huh?
There was, exactly. It was a tables match, and my first meeting ever with Logan X, I remember I was doing commentary with a guy named Dick Danger. I don't know if you remember him.
I remember the name.
Yeah, Ray Camarena, nice guy. He had said something like, he was looking at Logan X. First of all, calling him Hogan Y, trying to be the heel, the funny heel, calling him Hogan Y and some other something else. Then he says, "Oh yeah, he reminds me of Billy Kidman," which I looked at him closely. He did kind of look like Billy Kidman. He had long hair back then, like Billy Kidman. And we met. Red put him through a table. I remember that very clearly. I remember seeing the scratches on Logan's back. That's when I first met Logan, and we got together. And the Independent Wrestling Report, unfortunately, didn't last. So I got together with Logan. I had a camera crew back then, and that's how I started with MPW.
That is so good, and actually created a legacy here in Southern California, which is awesome.
It is.
It's always amazing to me also that wrestling fans have such long memories, because one of the funniest things when we were in the middle of doing the show last month, I was coming down to the ring to do my one announcement or whatever, and as I walked past somebody, they went UIWA at me, and I was like, oh my God. That was like, 10 years ago or something, And it's amazing how, they remember this kind of stuff. They really and truly do. And I'll get that from time to time. Someone will walk up to me and say, "Oh, I remember hearing you on, on Wrestle Talk with Dynamite D," or "I remember seeing you in that, what was that? There was that really good documentary that we were on, actually. Do you remember that one?
The Learning Channel one?
The Learning Channel one, yes.
The Learning Channel one. There's a really good documentary that they did, the Learning Channel, and it was everybody from like guys like the Destroyer to Dave Meltzer and back again. And yeah, exactly. And it was really well done. And I still get people who recognize me off of that, or even the other one I did where it was the Masked Referee. The secret. That's the secrets of pro wrestling. The secrets of pro wrestling that everybody knows. That's what they should have called it.
And
but I still get that.
If anybody can get a hold of that documentary that the Learning Channel did, it's really impressive because they did it on a shoestring budget, and there were several other wrestling documentaries made around that time that had a lot more resources, but were, in my opinion, way inferior to the one the Learning Channel did for what they had.
And you know what? Also, I think they had gotten WCW's. I think they were actually they got WCW to work on that. And so it was like they would talk to me about refereeing, and then like they would cut to Nick Patrick or something, and it was just kind of weird,
No, they had a lot of big. In fact, did they have some people in WWE on there too?
I think they might have actually.
They might have though.
They might have though. Either that or it was the people from WWE that were now with WCW. One of the two. But it was still because we shot them over at the Sportsman's Lodge.
In fact, that's a funny story there. Because they interviewed Superboy, and they interviewed both me and they interviewed Superboy, and I drove Superboy there. So we went to Sportsman's Lodge, and we go into this bedroom, and there's all these cameras, around the bed, and Superboy just looks at me saying, "We shooting a porn flick?" And it's so funny, it did look like that's what they were geared for.
Wow. And actually, it was great because they also purchased some video from the Al Snow Sabu match that we did in La Puente.
That's right.
And that was like probably the biggest exposure that thing ever got, and it was amazing how I still get people sending notes to me about that now. And you can find those on the internet if you want to find it was Sabu versus Al Snow in La Puente. It was
Bob's video, wasn't it? Didn't Bob shoot that? Bob Barnett?
Bob shot that. Bob shot it, and then we also shot it.
Okay.
Bob has the great one that follows outside where I take the bump for Al Snow, and Funk is under the trunk, the ring truck hiding.
And the one that we have a copy of, I think, was shot by Ron Head, wasn't it?
Ron Head, yeah. And but it's still a pretty amazing. Actually, at the very end, when Terry Funk runs in, it turns into almost a riot, a sure thing. And what's funny is if you look very closely at ringside, you can see guys like Craze and Supreme, who were at that time just wanting to be wrestlers, there watching the show.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I think the greatest compliment I ever got on that show was somebody walked up to me and said, "For a second, I looked in Terry Funk's eyes and I thought it was real." And I said, "Well, hey, you can't do any better than that, you know."
That was awesome. But I think Joey Chaos mentioned that particular show is what made him want to become a pro wrestler, which is awesome. Well, before we get too deep in the show, I think we should talk about the plethora of invasion angles going on in pro wrestling today. There's, of course, the now famous WWE NXT invasion. There is also the invasion in AAA. There is also the invasion in CMLL. And am I forgetting other invasions?
Yeah,
I feel like there's an indie one happening that I'm forgetting.
There's an indie one. The IWRG AAA invasion.
Well, I'm thinking of it. I think there was a U.S. indie one that I'm forgetting.
Oh, there is? Oh, God.
Well, once they do it on a national level, indies follow suit.
Yeah.
Unless I just have Howard Brody's book on the brain, and I'm thinking of like the ECW invasion of NWA New Jersey.
That's a great book. That is a really good book.
Yeah, I just finished it. I got it from the library. It's really good.
Well, what I like about it is that Howard has no qualms about quoting his lack of prowess in certain areas.
Yeah.
Which is usually nice, because usually in those books everybody's like, well, I did everything right and everybody else let me down. But it's not quite that way in that book, which I thought was really good.
I mean, the one thing was that I was kind of skeptical, though, of his story about almost having a deal with 4Kids Entertainment and Bandai for Ring Warriors, which it just seemed almost too good to be true. Like, even though the people involved weren't, talking to any newsletters or anything, and it was before Dave Meltzer had as many, non-wrestling contacts and stuff like that, it seems like something you would have heard about before now. Because if that went through, it would have been huge.
Yeah, the only thing that I say about that, Vix, is all the time is that anytime something doesn't seem completely right, I never believe it, except in pro wrestling. Or if something seems entirely, for some reason, pro wrestling is like this bizarro Twilight Zone, Phantom Zone type thing. That, if you look at the people who have been involved in wrestling, you look at, everything about wrestling. If you came out to me and told me, Hulk Hogan jumped off the roof and landed on his head of a 20-story building and walked away, I would probably go, well, it might have happened, because it just seems that way. I mean, everything, as Shakespeare would say, what's fair is foul and foul is fair.
The details of the story actually ring true. It just seems like something so big, it just seems weird to hear about it now. And also that you hear so many stories from we almost had this one big TV deal.
Yeah.
I think every promoter in their brother says that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, see, then that's always going to be it's kind of like trying to track down the history of the Old West, because there were so many, guys out there who were writing the dime penny novels and everything, and making up and adding to the legend of Billy the Kid or to Jesse James or whatever, all these guys, that it comes to a time now when it's kind of hard to figure out what's real and what's not real. And that's one of the things that I always am kind of annoyed with about professional wrestling, is that the wrestling history has been twisted around, and all this stuff has been done, and there's so many guys that are gone now that could fill in a lot of holes. It annoys me that promoters, and I understand why they did, but it annoys me as a fan over the years that promoters have wiped out certain things and changed certain things that we may never know the real story behind some things.
Oh, totally. I mean, it's funny. Mexico and Japan actually have, I'm not going to say they, didn't have these fictionalized histories, but they kept a lot of the old-timers' legacy alive. You can find out so much about the history of wrestling through Japanese and Mexican magazines,
and that's because also in Mexico and Japan, the fans there take it a little more seriously than they do in America.
Yes, but I think a lot of that lays with the promoters too. The promoters, as soon as they're done with something and made their money, I mean, traditionally the promoters just throw it away. They are not really interested in the legacy. At least that's how it appears.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, one of the things I love about the eccentric promoter Jack Pfeffer, who I don't know why somebody has not written a book or tried to make a screenplay on his life yet, but one of the things is, I guess that guy was a rat packer. While I don't think he intended to write a history on wrestling, he saved all the correspondence, all the payoff schedules, all the roster, and all that stuff is available. I mean,
that's why because he donated all his stuff to some place or whatever. I know if you go online, you can actually look most of it up.
Yes, I think it was like a university, wasn't it?
It's Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. Okay.
That's what it was. Yeah.
They have the inventory up on their website. You can't look at the actual.
And do you know what? Also, that's why also there's a Cornette book where he has a bunch of stuff like that in there, and that's what makes that fascinating. Also, I can't.
Oh yeah, all the payoff records and stuff that he.
Yeah, the payoff records and all that stuff in there.
Yeah, that he has, and he also in the Midnight Express DVD set, the rookie year set that he put out, the booklet has all the gate information and payoff and stuff. And
yeah, that Jim Cornette the first year DVD is absolutely. I can't recommend that.
Yeah, and the booklets add a lot to it too. One thing I thought was really interesting when he talks about like a show where he caught a glimpse of Lawler's payoff.
Yeah,
and it was something ridiculous. It was like $3,900 on a almost $40,000 house, and this was before he owned part of the company.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
but you know what's interesting to me also, and since we're in that same area, Kurt, you and I were talking about the details of the Martha Hart lawsuit last night.
Yes.
And basically, if they were stupid enough not to pay royalties to her, they're just going to get their ass handed to them, and they deserve to at that point. The one thing that's very interesting, and I hope that if Dr. Lucha is listening, he might call in because I know that he would be a good person to talk with, and also Bob Barnett would be a good person to talk about this sometime. And that is, the whole idea of intellectual property. We have the situations now where the guys come in, they either are given names or they sign over their names. And when they leave the group, they can't, and this is mostly the Fed, when they leave that group, they can't really wrestle as that character anymore. And, and down in Mexico, I guess the perfect, layout there is L.A. Park and La Parka, too, is another situation where, guys would leave the promotion and they would be replaced. And I find that very interesting because if you go back to any time from 1970 on back, intellectual property was just pissed on all over the place because, if one guy would leave, they put somebody else under the character, or they would, one guy would go into another territory and claim to be this other wrestler and would play. I mean, look at all the different Gorgeous Georges. Look at all the guys that would go in and claim to be the sons or brothers or whatever of all these different wrestlers.
Mr. Wrestling, the Assassin.
Yeah, I mean, oh my God! You know what? If I could do a documentary, I would like to find all the guys left who ever played an executioner and just interview all of them.
That would be awesome.
And I want to call it a room full of executioners, and that's all it is just a bunch of guys sitting around talking about that. And if you look at all that stuff, and for example, we had talked about it, Kurt, the passing of Rocket Monroe recently.
Yes.
Who was a guy who was supposed to be, in the old days, if Sputnik Monroe, who he was supposed to be the brother of, left the promotion, then they would bring somebody else in and name them. I think a great example of that out here is when the Von Brauners were out here, and they needed an extra Von Brauner brother, and they got some guy who was, some poor jobber,
Cliff
Von Brauner. And here's all these.
And he talked like a hick.
He did. He had a southern accent, so it's like, my brother Carl Von Brauner and I, and it was
I always wanted to ask Jeff Walton about that, because even as a 14-year-old kid, I just sat there saying, "What the hell?"
Yeah, because we've gone from intellectual property, it didn't matter, anybody can play anybody, or even you talk. And I thought about this with Pfeffer because of the idea of Hobo Brazil, Bruno Sammartino, all those characters. And it's amazing how it goes from one extreme to the other.
It is. It's a whole new world as far as that goes.
Yeah.
Kind of what they did with Ricky Steamboat when calling him the cousin of Sam Steamboat, and he's got no relation to Sam Steamboat at all.
And that's what's fascinating, Larry, also, is because in the old days, you know, it was a really big cachet to be a relative or the son or the brother or something of a wrestler. I mean, you know, and there were a lot of poor guys that, you know, could no way live up to that. I mean, a couple of the Von Erichs and David Sammartino and George Goulas spring to mind immediately. And then when you think about it now it's gone full circle. Now you have guys that you would think, like on NXT, that being a Rotunda or a Hennig would be something that you could push at least a little something. But instead, now they change their names because they don't want anybody to know, or they're stupid enough to say that they are, and they change names anyway. They don't want to get too far into second-generation wrestlers, where, you know, I feel like anything that gives the guys a chance to, you know, give the guys a chance to get ahead, you know, they're handicapping them by taking that away from them.
I agree with you, Dan, and that's what I kind of wrote that on my Facebook page about how
I saw that today, actually.
They dropped the junior on Ted DiBiase Jr. You know?
Yeah. Well, they do that with every junior.
And they do
that, and you know what? It still throws me because they would say Chavo Guerrero, and I go, oh, Chavo Sr.'s back, you know, and you look at that and you realize, and the same thing, especially for those of us who remember Ted DiBiase Sr. and even, you know, my God, I'm even freaking old enough to remember Bob Orton Sr.'s father.
Whoa,
you know, the Zodiac.
Whoa.
The Zodiac, yes.
That's a long time ago.
Well, that was 1975 when he came in as the Zodiac.
It was the end of his career. It was the very end of his career, and he came to California as the Zodiac. And the funny thing about it was, I saw him. I said, "Oh, that's the old man Orton," because he had played that character down in Florida and had been unmasked, and the magazine printed that's who it was.
I think he was about the only person we knew of using the Zodiac gimmick of the time. And in fact, I remember a few weeks into the gimmick, John Tolis came out and said, "I am 99% sure I know who you are under that mask. I think you're Bob Orton." And I was like, "Whoa." Wow, exactly.
And then remember also is Barry Orton eventually, I think, up in Canada played the Zodiac.
He did. That was in the late 1980s, if I remember right. 87 or 88?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because, see, I know the business.
I'm sorry?
Still in the business? I haven't heard from him.
Barry Orton?
Nope. No, I think
Orton.
He's long gone.
Oh, he's an actor now. He's an actor.
Yeah, he shows up
as... his name to, what is it, Barrymore Barlow or something?
Oh, he had some funky name that sounds really contrived. Sounds more like a porn star name. Barry Orton is a cool name. I don't know why you wouldn't just go with that.
Or even Barry O was a cool name. Yeah.
Yeah, that was. He lives. I think he lives in Vegas, if I remember correctly. But he shows up at the Cauliflower Alley banquets each year.
Yeah. Now, see, it's funny. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kurt.
Oh, and as his sister Rhonda, who I think she pretty much shows up every year too. I think she did a service for her father for the Cauliflower Alley Club after he passed away. Since we're into a bit of...
But you were speaking... Oh, no, Kurt, we were speaking about, a minute ago about Sam Steamboat and Ricky Steamboat. You know, my feeling is if the WWE, when they eventually bring up Ricky Steamboat's kid, if they don't leave him as a Steamboat, they're really screwing up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and well, they probably won't even want to refer to him as the Dragon, so they'll think up something clever like the iguana or the gecko.
Exactly.
The gecko.
Talking about old days, I think people have heard me on several occasions talk about how frustrating it is that when the local Lucha Libre promotion that ran at Hodco Plaza for, I think, about 8 or 9 years. This was before people had camcorders, when they were still strictly a luxury. And I started attending the Hadco Plaza Lucha matches in 1981, and I will still say hands down, it was the best indie promotion I have ever seen. If you look at it, what it was trying to do in its day and age, in its era. And one of the most frustrating things is I would see all these great matches, these great shows, and none of it was being captured on tape. And I was so shocked to be perusing YouTube a few weeks ago, and Jose Fernandez suggested I check out this one subscriber. And he has a lot of old Olympic Auditorium and LA Sports Arena material from, the last dwindling days of the LaBelle promotion, including a match with Pierre Blanco, who was Mickey Doyle under a hood, versus Tim Flowers. And I remember being there live at the match and look closely at Pierre's punches on Flowers. They were intentional potatoes.
Wow.
But what blew me away was this user. His name is Jellybeans178, if anybody is interested. It said, he had one post that said Lucha Libre. And I just figure, probably just, some of LaBelle's luchadores at the Olympic. I turned it on, and I was really shocked to see a match between Loverboy and Cosmos, both who were guys who went on to be a big deal in the local Lucha Libre scene here in Southern California by the mid-'80s. This was a match of theirs in their rookie years. It looks like it was one of the openers because it just went one fall, which the Hadco Plaza promotion, essentially when they ran a show, the opening match was always a one-fall affair and always a singles match. And I urge anybody who is even mildly interested in this sort of thing to check it out. It's not the best Hadco Plaza match there is, but they did some really beautiful high spots, and considering it's an opening match, it's just a taste of what Hadco Plaza provided every Sunday. And the reason there was some television coverage of this was at some point in 1981, some promoters were actually having weekly shows at the Olympic Auditorium. I do not know who was, behind the wheel of these shows, but they actually had a TV deal for several months. And they brought in a lot of stars from Mexico like Cesar Valentino, Super Máquina, Huracan Ramirez. But the undercard and even, involved in some of the main events were the Hadco Plaza boys. And I thought nobody had any footage of these shows. But there are a couple of matches that do feature some of the Lucha boys, and in fact, I just sent him an email recently asking him if he has any more. But one of the things you'll see if you watch this match is Cosmos and Loverboy did a very unusual style of lucha. It was lucha style, but I have a feeling every region in Mexico or South America has a slightly different take on how to do a lucha match and a slightly different manner of high spots. And that's one of the things I remember about the Hadco Plaza boys. It was a beautiful, fluent Mexican style, but if you watched a match like taking place in CMLL from its day, it was a whole different, the best way to put it is they almost had a different in-ring dialect. And this is a decent example of what an opening match at Hadco Plaza was like if you check Jellybean's footage out. The opening matches, the wrestlers were always told not to go high spot crazy. And if they did a tope, it was usually at the climax of the match. It would usually either finish the match or lead to the finish. And that's what these folks are doing. They're not stealing the show, but just kind of, how would you say, enhancing it.
That's funny because... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm saying, the reason I jumped in on it is because the stealing the show phrase always makes me nuts. And I think it's mainly because of the fact that having done some promotion, I always want the guys to look good and look as best as they can. But people forget that a lot of the shows, not necessarily TV shows, but the old school shows, are put together a certain way so there's a build to it. And sometimes a guy who's in a first or a second match, what the promoter really wants from him is to have a really good match, the best match he can, but not to go out of his way to overshadow the matches that are to follow, because it really is a detriment to the guys and a detriment to the show in general to do that. So whenever I hear people saying, "Oh, well, I'm going to go out there and steal the show," I always think that's not in the spirit of what professional wrestling is supposed to be. That's somebody who's selfish and wants to do a bunch of high spots and get over and doesn't really care about the show.
Oh, I was usually an opening card guy for the Lucha promotions here, or maybe the second match at times, and I was always given the message, entertain them, get them warmed up, but don't wear them out. Don't wear out the audience. So, if every match is a 5-star match packed with high spots and near finishes, then the audience is going to be spent, exhausted by the time the main event, the people who are selling the tickets to the matches, you don't want people to be burnt out and want to go home by the end of the evening.
Yeah, and let's throw that out to the rest of the guys, because you guys are younger than we are. I mean, do you think that's correct, or do you think there's situations where stealing the show is okay? I'd just be curious what somebody else felt.
I don't think stealing the show. Oh, go ahead.
I think it just depends on how the card's laid out and stuff, because when you think about the famously great opening matches, like Bret versus Owen Hart, or Rey Mysterio against Psychosis, or Brian Pillman or Jushin Liger, even though they had these great matches that were also very spectacular with the high spots, they still fit into the card in a certain way where they didn't show up everyone else.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I mean, I think, obviously when you book a live show and when you book a pay-per-view, they're two different animals altogether.
Yeah.
They always are, and that's why I feel like the stealing the show thing, and sometimes you want that in the opening of a pay-per-view, but like at a smaller level, I just think that, an opening match is supposed to be something that goes on while people are getting, seated in their seats or whatever. Whereas if you're doing, and I don't know, do they do with the pay-per-views anymore? They used to do a thing where you could watch the first 5 or 10 minutes and then buy it if you wanted to, or pass on it. I don't know if they do that anymore.
I don't think they do that anymore. And
they used to do that, and I could understand why you would want to start the show off hot, because of the fact that, you wanted somebody to say, well, this is great, I can't turn away from this, I got to buy it.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I agree with you guys, and nothing against Ring of Honor. I love watching Ring of Honor. Got some great wrestling. But they do that. They do that often. A lot of their shows before the main event, a lot of their matches before their main events, rather, are usually the better matches. And PWG is kind of the same way. And not to disparage them, but that's what I've been seeing lately.
Yes, and I think that's a weakness in indie wrestling today overall is, I don't know if it's the booker, people booking the show just say, okay, do whatever you want, or if they tell them try to steal the show, but it seems like there's not a lot of thought put into how the card in general is constructed.
Well, that's why I think you had a good point there, because here's the deal also. God, I'm going to sound like somebody's grandpa. I know I am in this thing. But
join the club.
In the old days, the guys that were promoting were guys that had been around for a long time. And when the workers came in, they were older than they were. They could talk to them. They could give examples. They could do this stuff. Nowadays, in many cases, the guys who are promoting the show, and oftentimes are the same age or younger. And their idea is, I want to get a ring and a bunch of these guys that can really do all this stuff, and I'm going to put it in there, and every match is going to be a main event, and it's going to be boom, boom, boom. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's not a lot of leadership from a promotion standpoint by a lot of the guys that are promoting these days. And I'd almost be willing to give some of the guys on the show a pass, because no one says to them, look, I want this, I want that. I don't want you doing this, I don't want you doing that.
I first started seeing that with Antonio Alvarez's promotion at All Nation Center in the early 90s, and it was actually up to the wrestlers to find out what everybody else was doing in a match, because Antonio was a super nice guy and really nice to all the wrestlers and stuff, but he wouldn't give a lot of thought into booking the show. I remember, in fact, there was one time where I was doing the angle with Ebony Blade when he was Gemini Kid, our friend Eric Anderson, and we were having a hair versus mask match, and we wanted to build up to it. Since I was a heel, I wanted him just thrashing me all around and beating me in 2 straight falls in the weeks before that. And Antonio kind of didn't understand what we were getting at, and he just kind of let the opening guys, do whatever they wanted. And one of the worst things about that is one evening there were 2 heel changes in one night, and it was both the exact same heel change.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing. Do you remember I told you the very first card that I ever co-promoted, I didn't really follow the matches that closely. There were 5 matches, and every one of them began with the Pearl Harbor attack. Every one of them.
Like, wow, what a surprise, hooray.
Yeah, exactly.
In the old MPW, we were kind of guilty of that also. We're doing things a little bit differently now, but we were kind of guilty of that also. All our matches were, I'd say, 3 stars or above when we ran in 2001.
Well, and when you start in the business, especially if you're a fan who appreciates watching it, I think that's probably your first instinct is to, blow everybody away. And I think it's just kind of through time and learning and seeing what works and what doesn't work is, how a promotion will mature.
And it's sometimes it's also just a happy happenstance, and that is, when I came into the business with my so-called brilliant career, I came in never wanting to be a wrestler. I was interested in the promotion. I was interested in refereeing and stuff like that. And I was very lucky through Cauliflower Alley to get to spend a lot of time with guys who were, a lot of them unfortunately are no longer around. But I remember being invited out to, in Lancaster, a guy named Jesse James, who had wrestled out here in the 40s and 50s, and invited all these old
friend.
Yeah, George's best friend, and all those days had invited a bunch of people out to a barbecue on a Sunday afternoon, and asked me to come along, and I went out there and I sat there and got the best lesson I had ever seen or heard in professional wrestling from sitting there for 3 hours eating hamburgers with these guys.
Yeah, it's amazing when you hang around somebody with tons of experience. You learn so much. I remember learning when I was first learning to wrestle in 1982. I was learning, what I thought was a lot from several different people. And then in 1984, I got to know Mickey Doyle, and he said, "Oh, I'm getting back into the biz. I want somebody to work out with me." And I was very tickled that he had me come down and help just kind of be like a tackling dummy for him. And while it was supposed to kind of help him just kind of get back in shape and have somebody to work with, he actually started giving me some lessons. And I tell you, in 60 minutes of getting a lesson from a journeyman who's been there and done that, you learn so much more in 60 minutes than you do training months and months with.
And as you and I have just talked about many times, we've been very lucky to be able to spend a lot of time with Jeff Walton over the years from the Olympic Auditorium.
Oh, there's a guy who's trying on some time.
We should have Jeff on sometime, really, because there's a guy who is literally a part of living history when it comes to professional wrestling. He did everything from being the president of the Freddie Blassie fan club up until promoting and announcing, and then eventually playing Randy Savage's manager down in Memphis, Tux Newman.
Yes, Tux Newman. Yeah, he is one awesome cat. We should try to get Jeff Walton on here sometime. There's a walking encyclopedia of Southern California wrestling history.
Larry, let me ask you a question. Just real quick. I was saying, in the same way, Kurt and I have been talking about guys that we admired and whatever. Is there anybody that you, with your announcing and your work and promotion or anything, that you kind of use as your benchmark to what you want to achieve?
Yeah, there's several guys actually. I grew up loving Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan. In my opinion, the best announced team. Gorilla and Bobby cracked me up like no other. And as far as wrestling announcers, guys like Jim Ross, obviously, Gordon Soley, Lance Russell.
And from reading your writings, Larry, I know you're also very close to Michael Cole.
Oh, yes, I am. Man, what a joke of an announcer. I will tell you.
You know, when you want to hear something funny, I actually don't mind him, but the only reason I don't mind him is, a lot of people our age have very, very romantic memories of how great wrestling was in the territorial days. But I think sometimes what people forget, for every great commentator like, Dick Lane or Gordon Soley, there were 5 or 6 announcers that could barely even finish a sentence and would, forget, who the wrestlers were, what the moves were. I think my favorite example was, I think it was out of Georgia, there was a promotion where Rock Hunter was one of the color commentators, and one of the workers does a Russian leg sweep, and Rock Hunter says, well, back in my day when I was wrestling, they called that move a Russian leg sweep. And now, today, they call that move, they call it something else now. So Michael Cole, for all his flaws, looks flawless. Sounds
what I would
me.
what I would love to do, my feeling is we could settle this whole thing with Michael Cole once and for all one way, and that is if someone would kidnap Vince, lock him in a truck, and let Michael Cole call an entire card on his own without any prompting in his ear. Because then you'd be able to see what the guy can do.
That.
Oh, yeah. Man. I would love to hear that, too. Oh, my goodness. Him and Todd Grisham. I mean, they're two guys that know absolutely nothing about wrestling. Nothing.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, again, that's kind of what Vince wants. He wants somebody who is like, it's like those old horror films about the guys who would take a lump of clay and make somebody out of a lump of clay, and it would bring them to life. And that's kind of what he is. I keep thinking about, again, I've been lucky enough to hear, besides Dick Lane and the other guys you mentioned, a lot of other announcers over the years. And, unfortunately, the really good announcers, I can do about 10, and that's about it. But there was a couple guys. There was a guy, does anybody remember the old Southwest group before the WWE took over that USA spot?
Bill Blanchard's group, yes.
Are you talking about Steve
Stacks? That I remember Steve Stacks, and also there was another guy named Rapido Rodriguez.
Yeah.
And they did the commentary. They did it bilingual, but they did it standing side by side, which was hysterical.
I don't remember that.
They would sit there and Black Corbin would finish speaking to Steve Stacks, and then he would turn and say, "Okay, Rapido," and then he would talk to him, and they would just stand there. And what I love about, I don't know why this is the case, but it's really true. I think it's impossible for a wrestler to address an announcer without calling him by his full name.
Mm-hmm.
Because it always seems that way. Because Tully Blanchard and he was on the shows with Steve, would always go, well, listen, Steve Stacks. You know what, Steve Stacks, I'm going to be, and I don't know why, it was just something very easy to say. Also, I'd like to put a 2 cents in for a really good guy that I heard the very last couple months of his career named Ray Morgan, who worked for the WWF back on the East Coast before Vince came in and took over. There was a guy named Ray Morgan. He's the guy you actually hear at the beginning of the WWE. The whole world is watching little promos they do. You can hear Ray WMorgan in there. And also there's another guy that was doing the main WWF show at that time before Vince, a guy named Bill Cardell. Chili Billy Cardell, as they called it, because he was out of Pittsburgh, and he used to host horror films there. And, in fact, if you ever see the original Night of the Living Dead, he's the newscaster in the Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, yes, and he actually does a little plug each week for the zombie podcast called Mail Order Zombie. He does a little plug for
exactly.
the show.
And he's the guy that gets to talk to the sheriff who has that great line. He goes, "They're dead. They're all messed up."
I love that film. God, I love that film.
Bix, do you have any favorite announcers?
Besides the obvious ones that, like your Lance Russell, Gordon Soley, Jim Ross types, I think.
Yeah.
I also really like Steve Stack. I love Kent Walton from England.
Oh yes, now that's somebody who's very underrated.
Oh yeah, I forgot about him. Yeah,
and also Rick Stewart in Kansas City and Alabama.
You know, I was going to mention him. That was a guy that I really thought. Unfortunately, he died at a very young age, but he was really solid, and he very easily could have moved up to one of the bigger groups and just done really, really well.
Yeah, it's too bad that he's really just remembered as the other guy at Starrcade '86 with Tony Schiavone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he was really good, and I mean, it's kind of a shame that he was kind of stuck in Kansas City because that's certainly someone being above the promotion in terms of talent level.
Yeah, I mean, when you were stuck in Kansas City, you were stuck with a really bad promotion.
Yeah. I mean, at least in Alabama, he had better wrestlers to start with.
Exactly.
Oh, and
Fredo, do you want to weigh in on anything? Fredo, you want to weigh in on anything?
Well, I always like Leobardo Magadan. The guy.
Oh yeah, okay.
Magadan.
Yeah. Now, Fredo, you know the reason I called on you is just because it irritates you. You know that, don't you?
You know I'm done. You know I'm done at the 30-minute mark.
Yeah, exactly. You're like as Bill Watts used to say about Junkyard Dog, you don't get paid by the hour. So that's what it is.
Alfredo's just going to give us the thump and put us in line and make us work all this time.
Yeah, I'll just
exactly.
Laugh and that's it. I'm out.
I also really like Charlie Platt from Alabama.
Oh yeah, now there's another old school guy that was really good.
And I like Mark Lawrence a lot more than most people.
I like Mark Lawrence.
He's solid.
He has an amazing gravitas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like even he would say something like that would sound completely ridiculous from anyone else, but it would work with him. You know, like the winner of the match, Kevin. Or what was the other thing? And like Chris Adams getting hit with a bottle, and he's saying, like, he may be dead.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. A lot of people love Bill Mercer, but I never quite got him. I never quite understood what the whole.
I thought he was a terrible. Even back in the day,
he always sounded like he was somebody's drunken uncle calling professional wrestling.
Yeah, he would say some things that made no sense. I remember once, when Terry Gordy was, just turned babyface. He's going to the ring, and Bill Mercer calls him Terry Gordy, friend of the young boy. And I rewound after I taped it. I rewound it and said, "Wait, what did he just say? Friend of the young boy? What?"
I remember when he used to call Iceman King Parsons' finisher the butt. I still remember that. I don't know why.
One of my favorite ones was when they were doing the Sunshine Missy Hyatt feud, and there would always be the catfight spot at the end. He would sit there and he would go, "And Missy and Sunshine are in a glorious battle on the mat."
Actually, as bad as he was, though, in World Class, I think Jay Saldy, when he was his color commentator, was even worse.
Oh God, yeah.
Really bad guys.
He was like, if you ever seen Anchorman, the Steve Carell.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
He's like if the Steve Carell character in Anchorman was a wrestling announcer.
Yeah. Oh God.
Just these explosive comments.
Also, for people who belong to the F4W website, there is a great interview with Lance Russell that just went up in the last day or so. That I really suggest to people have got to hear it. Because,
Lance Russell is
that
one of those guys. I could hear him just reading out of a textbook, and it would sound like golden comfort food.
Well, and that's also we were talking about the Cornette First Rookie Year DVD. If you listen to how subtly and how easily Lance would pull this stuff out of the guys and help them and lead them, and he was so real in his own way. I mean. Eddie Marlin, the promoter, would occasionally jump in the ring and always got busted open. The guy had the worst luck in the world. And they'd be sitting there going, Eddie's in the ring. Eddie's busted open again.
Come on now.
Like that. But Lance was, even when he said Lawler's name, he was going to sit there and he would go, Lawler's in there now. And it was so great to watch.
Jerry. Come on,
something that, again, only somebody, it just works because it's Lance Russell saying it. If anybody else delivered it, it would sound awkward and clumsy.
Oh, we forgot to talk about Bob Caudle, too.
Oh, Bob Caudle, yeah.
Great guy.
Another great old school guy.
Yeah, it's the same sort of folksy charm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that even goes. I think that even goes farther as to wrestling knowledge and impeccable delivery. I think when you kind of a down-home charm, I think that goes a lot.
In the old days, in the territorial days, that was the whole idea. The announcer was like the favorite nephew of the baby face. And whenever the heels would come in, he'd be like, he would scold them, and how could you, and all that kind of stuff. And they never got involved in angles. No one very rarely ever. And I think they did that one angle with Lance Russell in all the years he was there, and that was it. But I mean, the thing was, the guy was just there to make fun of the heels whenever they had lost, or to get very indignant over something they had done. And that was a real lost art, for the local territorial promoters. Announcers at that time.
I want to reroute really quickly here to just a little more Los Angeles indie history, and the reason is I actually received an email from Scott Broadhurst, who is probably best known in L.A. as Scott Snot.
Oh.
And the last couple of years, he's been working the Lucha Libre indies here in Southern California, and I got an email from him. He had read one of the old issues of the Wrestling Observer that is being posted on the Figure 4 website, and he saw some results from the All Nation Center that both Physical and I were on, and he asked me if I remembered the man in the main event named Farin Kazin. And it was so funny because I remember him very clearly, despite the fact that I think I only wrestled on 2 shows that he was involved in. And Scott said he came and went in the Lucha Indie promotion he's involved with in the same fashion, and said he was, was a really, really good worker, a good heel, but would have made a better babyface, I think is how he put it. And it's so funny because I remember not only was he main eventing it at the All Nation Center in the early 90s, but in the same fashion that Scott said, he just came and went. He was actually booking the entire shows. When we went over our finishes in the opening match, we had to go to Farin to see if, the finish was acceptable or, I think Augie did a run-in at the end, and we had to check with him to, know how far we could go with it. And he had a hair versus hair match against Jalisco Primero, who wrestled in the LaBelle promotion both as El Medico and as Apollo Jalisco. And I'll never forget wrestling on that show. I think that's actually definitely top 5 of the matches I had. That was, I think, one of my favorite matches. And part of what helped is, since we were the undercard of the hair versus hair match, All Nation Center was packed. And when I say packed, I mean packed with a passionate crowd who were bringing Mexico flags and, in support of Jalisco. And when Jalisco came to the ring, they played an old Mexican song that had something to do with, Jalisco in Mexico, and the crowd just went nuts. It was one of those, perfect nights. In fact, that was you and Larry were there at that show, because when I watched the tape, you can hear you and Larry Doyle making cracks and making Judo Gene LaBelle references, which makes the tape even more endearing, I must say. But what I remember most of that Farin Kazin was when he was getting ready for the hair versus hair match. On the small indie shows, they did it just like they do in Mexico, where each wrestler had a second in his corner. Mm-hmm. And Farin Kazin picked Augie, and Jalisco picked our friend Grant Miller, who had just started, I think, in just a few months before wrestling on the Lucha shows. He wrestled under the name Golden Boy.
Golden Boy.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And he was still new to the business. You know, a lot of things he didn't understand, but he was really excited when Jalisco said, "You're going to be my second." And, you know, we were, you know, jazzed for him. And then Fareed Kazim is talking to Augie in Spanish, and then Fareed looks over at Grant and says something in Spanish, and Grant says, "Oh, I don't speak Spanish, I don't understand." And then Augie says, "Oh, Fareed just wanted to thank you for, you know, the sacrifice you're making tonight." And Grant is like, "What? I don't understand." And he said, "Oh, Fareed Kazim, you know, he said, you know, well, you know, that's part of a hair versus hair match. Every hair versus hair match in Lucha Libre," he said, "not only does a loser get his head shaved, but the man in this corner gets his head shaved."
Wow.
And Grant, who was already, you know, very fair-skinned, looked twice as pale as he originally was. And he says, "Wait, I have to shave my head?" And both Fareed and Augie had the best poker faces. You had no idea that, you know, it was a rib. They were just so matter-of-fact about it. And Grant says, "Kurt, can you talk to them? I can't shave my head. I can't go into work like this." This was before the bald-headed mixed martial arts look was in vogue.
Which is pretty amazing when you consider the fact that Grant was pretty well follically challenged anyway. I mean, he didn't have a lot up there to begin with.
He was already starting to bald a bit. But he said, "Kurt, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, Grant, I don't know how to tell you this, but yeah, that's just part of being a luchador. And you already agreed, and if you back out now, it's not just like losing face, it's a betrayal." And Grant just had the most helpless look in his face, like, "What do I do?" He says, I can't do this. And then finally Augie slaps on the back and says, "We're just messing with you, Grant." And I never saw somebody look more relieved at a rib.
Grant always had a certain intensity about him anyway. I mean, this poor guy, in his very first match, his first professional match, he broke his arm.
I remember that against Cara Marcada.
And he actually still came back. A lot of guys would just say, "Well, that's a sign, I'm not going to do it." But he did.
Yeah, if you looked at Grant, he looked like a bookworm, like a, the executive type, very unassuming looking guy, but actually was a pretty tough customer. I mean, I remember
very much
when
so.
We were doing the game show, he actually took on a boxer and had it be a shoot, and he actually tapped the boxer out. And
yeah, he did. He tapped the boxer. He was very, those are back in those early days we were doing the game shows, which he was the mastermind behind. And those are some really solid some really solid shows. In fact, the night after we did the La Puente show, we actually had a game show over in Little Chinatown.
Tokyo at
Little Tokyo, and it was Al Snow and Dan Severin had worked a work shoot, basically because Art Davies was there to look at Severin, and they wanted to make sure he looked really, really good. And I was reffing it, and even as a work shoot, it was still one of the stiffer things I'd ever seen. It really was,
that was a good match that they had.
Yeah, that was a great match they had.
In fact, with the Al Snow match, when he tapped out to Severin's armbar, you got to tell him what Al Snow said to you when you were refereeing it.
Oh, which is it? I may not remember this.
He was in selling the pain intensely.
Oh, he's selling the pain. I said, someone helping with because Al is wonderfully grumpy and all these things. But he said something to I said, let's get somebody his arm is hurt or whatever it is, and he goes, "It's my wrist, you idiot." Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, I am. That was hysterical.
Wasn't as good as when wasn't as good still as hearing Road Warrior Animal tell Dan Severin to lighten up.
Yeah, that was the work match where Dan Severin actually cranked up the pressure a little too much, and Hawk made a hasty exit that night or that afternoon, I should say. Oh Lord! Well, so I was really jazzed to hear Scott Snott inquire about Fareed Kazim, and actually I'm a little motivated to see if I could find out something a little more from these guys, or more about this guy, and see if I could get in touch with any of the old Hadco Plaza boys and get further info on him. But yeah, he was he was interesting. He was a wrestler. He was a very good worker, too, and was one of those guys popped up and left as soon as he showed up. Oh, well. Boy, there's a lot of stuff I was going to get into tonight, but we're moving along pretty quickly here, so I think I want to wrap it up. But the irony, I got to tell you, is we covered a lot of ground here, but for the first time in ages, I actually watched the entire AAA show that was televised on Galavision.
Oh, my God.
Sunday. Oh, my God. So
I haven't even done that in a while.
Kurt,
yeah, well, I don't want to... We don't want to spend...
Brian,
oh, I'm sorry, Fredo, what?
Brian brought this up during the show, and he was talking about how you saw the first two matches.
Yes.
And told Dr. Lucha that you liked the show, and Dr. Lucha was, like, completely confused with why you liked it in the first place.
I don't know if we were watching the same show or not, but I
think that's what happened. But what I was thinking was, Kurt only watched the first half of the show at that time. You had told me it was the first half. Like, Kurt didn't finish watching the show.
And that was a great half. The first two matches, the opening match was Alex Kozlov teaming with Sexy Star against Aerostar and Fabi Apache. And it reminded me of watching TV wrestling when I was, young. The match flowed beautifully. So many of AAA's matches turned into clusterfucks, and, you're just watching guys just beating each other down, kind of posing a lot. This match was so fluid and had a couple of run-ins from the American girls who just entered AAA and followed up with a run-in by Gran Apache. And the crowd was so hot for this, too. I mean, it was alive. A crowd was totally alive. And that was followed by a match that featured Dr. Wagner Jr., Pimpinela Escarlata, and Octagon against Electroshock, Silver King, and what's the guy, Mephisto, I think it was. And again, it was a match that was just high energy. Not tons of fancy high spots, not, tope after tope after tope. Just a good, solid match, and the topes executed were really spectacular. Got over again.
What we need to do, Kurt, we need to do is we need to get Dr. Lucha on the show next time and have you two do point-counterpoint on this.
Yeah, I actually want to call him on this one. I really do, because those first two matches made the show. The final two matches was one which involved L.A. Park and the other involved La Parca in six-man tag teams. I will say the crowd was hot for the matches, but they weren't nearly as up for these matches as they were the opening TV matches.
Dr. Lucha thought you were talking about Triple Mania because Brian asked him about Triple Mania, and then he brought up what you had told him, and then that's when it kind of confused him.
Okay, interesting. Well, I'm going to take him to task anyway because I can, and because I enjoy it, though.
So you're probably no longer in Brian's eye as a fine man. That's probably what's happening.
I'm a fine mess now.
You've dropped down a slot or two.
That's
whatever.
right. That's right. Well, oh dear. Well, my ego's compromised enough that I'm just going to have to write him, and I'm not going to explain myself. I'm going to explain Dr. Lucha Steve Sims. I enjoy the feud that we're kind of brewing up here, me and Steve Sims.
That's
He's
true.
a wonderful friend and a wonderful nemesis.
Kurt, and we're going to try to get him out to the MPW show.
I hope he comes.
We want to get him out there because we would love to have him there. Kurt, I know this is on the air. We're doing housekeeping on the air, but make a little note. There's a couple people we should have on the show sometime, and one is Steve Sims.
I would love that.
Another
one
all the time.
Yeah, but to have him on, to discuss certain things. But we should also, I'd like to have we should have Jeff Walton on the show.
Yeah, I would like to do that too. That would be awesome.
And also, I really think that we should ask Brian Alvarez to be on the show, because I think Brian
Alvarez.
I think Brian would have a lot of fun with this format.
I think he would. We'll have Fredo ask him all the questions.
Yeah, exactly. We'll save Fredo. We'll save Fredo for Dave Meltzer.
Yes,
that would be a conversation I want to hear.
We'll let
Fredo and Dave Meltzer.
We'll let Bix talk to Brian Alvarez about all this.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Bix.
That's pretty cool, actually. I think we have some fun shows. There's one other thing I want to mention about this AAA show that I saw on TV. While the last two matches were really lackluster, they were really long, and you had a number of wrestlers there who, like, both La Parcas, their bodies aren't what they used to be.
But you know,
and you understand that they can only do so much, but boy, those matches were long, and there was so much heel posing.
You know why they're long, though?
I'm sorry?
They're long because they're doing two shows for each. Off of one taping, they're doing two shows.
Yeah,
that's
and
true,
also it takes a long time to wheel them down on gurneys and put them in the ring. Yeah.
Well, they should edit them down for TV. They really
already
should.
edit them down for TV.
Oh, they need to edit them more than. Here's another thing. In that main event, the main event that involved La Parca, Joe Leader, and Micho versus Hernandez, Suzuki, and Chessman. You know me. I don't give a rat's ass about kayfabe, nothing like that. But I saw something that was just absurd. While they're wrestling, you look over at one of the turnbuckles, and the cameraman is sitting on top of the turnbuckle filming the match.
Oh, God.
And in plain sight of the other cameras, and I thought, whoa, that's kind of stupid. Well, he'll probably get down in a minute. No, he was sitting on the turnbuckle for the rest of the match.
Oh, God, I got to watch that then.
You have to watch it. It was, I just shook my head. I remember once in San Francisco on one of the Incredibly Strange Wrestling shows, it was actually awkward for poor Stefan De Leon, but he was a stickler for that kind of stuff. And there was this photographer who got right up next to the turnbuckle and was actually, middle-aged guy, probably looked in his 50s, and, was taking photos actually probably a little too close. He was up on the mat apron and everything. So Stefan decides that he wants to teach this guy a lesson and has his opponent fling him into the turnbuckle. And he didn't hurt the guy or anything, but slammed the turnbuckle really hard, and, the guy, lost his footing a bit. Well, when we get back into the dressing room, we find out the photographer was the famous fetish photographer, Eric Kroll. And
wait, Eric Kroll that used to write for The Torch?
No, I don't think he ever wrote for The Torch. If you look on Amazon.com, his last name is spelled Kroll.
Oh, okay, that was Eric Kroll with one L, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, but poor Stefan was a huge fan of Eric Kroll's. And when he found out who he was, he went up to him and was, apologizing and, oh my God, I had no idea what I was doing. And I give it to Eric Kroll. He was very, very cool, very nice about it. But that was the one thing on the AAA that just looked absurd. These guys are flinging themselves into the ropes, hitting turnbuckles, and the photographer, the cameraman rather, doesn't even
just sit there.
Yeah, he just sat there. I mean, I don't want to get too picky about kayfabe, but that was, I was just aghast.
Kurt, you realize you're talking about a sport where if you throw a man into the ropes, he automatically hits the ropes and rebounds back out at you.
Yeah, it's a law of pseudo-physics. It's pop physics is what it is.
So it was like world-class, like people say watching world-class tapings was live because they had the cameraman in the ring.
Yes.
God. Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Well, see, they shouldn't be in there because, the ring is sacred ground.
I loved that. I loved Les Thatcher's take on that.
Yeah.
He's awesome. Well, I do have to wrap it up now, but I want to thank all you guys. We had 5 of us on this time, so we have to go from Los Cuatro Rudos to being a wrestling family like the Brazos or something like that.
There we go.
So hey Larry, I want to thank you for coming on. I hope you'll call in again in the future.
Oh, I definitely will, and thank you very much, Kurt. I love this show, and check out mpwwrestling.com. Check out my little column. I wrote a little thing about you as well.
Oh yes, I read that, and I really, really enjoyed that. And I was actually very moved by that. And I want to thank you.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, it was a great story.
Okay. So, and thank you again, Bixie Demon. Thank you, Fredo, for always engineering this show. And as always, thank you, Dan Farren, for not failing to call tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It'll never happen again. I promise.
That's right. That was some passive grammar I used there. Thank you for not forgetting to call. I'll say it in a roundabout way as I can. Thank you for resisting failing us or something like that. This is where I tap out because my grammar is going, and I just want to thank all you cats for listening live and all you cats who download, and just want to remind you that anytime you're walking the streets of Southern California and you see a bright light flying through the sky, it is not a shooting star. No, no, no. It is a heavenly handful of Moncell's powder. Wow! See you in 2 weeks, you hep cats.